Every story that has a character arc or a character who refuses to arc has story dynamics. That includes children's fable, Horton Hears Who. Some stories lose their way and it becomes confusing, but Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss, never got confused about the dynamics at play in this story. It is a beloved story and it can help you figure out the dynamics at play in your story. And I would just ask, are you as clear about your story dynamics as Dr. Seuss was about his? Because that's what gives you narrative drive. If you're not sure, download the Story Dynamics Quick Guide linked below. It's free and it can help clear things up for you. And if it clears it up for you, then it clears it up for your readers. Highly recommended. In the last video, we went all the way through Horton Hears a Who, paying particular attention to the 7 joules, Joules, a unit of energy. First, let's look at when the joules occur in Horton. We're accustomed to seeing the StoryJoules model like this, all nicely balanced and even. Or like this when we're doing a story X-ray and just looking at those 7 joules. But they're misleading, and what's misleading about them is it looks so even, so nicely distributed. And stories are often not that even, especially this one. So let's reduce this to a clean pie chart, and we'll take all the words off. There, now we have it with nothing but the 8 segments. It's clean. Every segment is exactly 1/8 of the pie. But in Horton Hears a Who, it looks like this. It's a very unbalanced wheel. Let's put the labels back so we can orient ourselves. What I find interesting is that the mindset-shattering midpoint happens about 1/3 of the way through the story, and the dig down deeper happens with about 1/3 left to go. That's a very unusual balance, and it really drives, it ups the conflict and the pressure and the drive in that very last segment. The reason I like to show these balances is because it helps us as writers. We don't have to lock into a 12.5% number of pages or words for each of the 8 segments. We have flexibility. If you didn't see the prior video, I'd watch it just to see how Dr. Seuss ramps up the tension in those final pages. And if you want to be sure not to miss any future videos, hit the subscribe button. Now let's look at the story dynamics at play in Horton. Remember the foundation. We have the external dimension of order and chaos, and it's that chaos that puts pressure on our protagonist to change or not. Because I believe story at its core is about how a person changes or chooses not to change, I like to start with the internal dynamic. So let's go there. The protagonist starts at stasis. Horton starts it splashing in his pool, but he will be demanded to change, as are all protagonists, or we don't have a story. How they are demanded to change, what their change needs to look like or should look like, determines the internal dynamic. So the question is, what internal change is demanded? Is it their view of themselves, their self-worth, their view of the world, their responsibility to others, their sacrifice for love? Horton seems to have a pretty healthy self-worth. He's an elephant walking through the world. And he has a clear view of the world. He may be a little naive, but his view of the world doesn't particularly change. You could think he sacrifices for love, but it's not really love. He doesn't have a relationship with the Whos. He sacrifices because of his responsibility to others. He feels responsible for them. As he says, a person's a person, no matter how small. Given that, the internal dynamic of Horton Hears a Who is redemption. Now let's move to the external dynamics. Where does the avatar feel the pressure? Is it in their body, their experience of injustice, their experience of evil, their relationships? With Horton, it's the body. He treks through mountains, he gets threatened with being caged, and the Whos are threatened with extinction. They will be put in bezelnut oil and bezelnut stew. But also, injustice is the motivation for that treatment of the Whos. What the kangaroo and the monkeys want to do to Horton and the Whos, cage Horton, kill the Whos, is unjust. I don't think it's evil, it's misguided. But even though it's misguided, it's still a crime. While there is some relationship between Horton and the mayor, that pressure is not really between their relationship. It's about both of them trying to prevent an injustice. That gives us an action external dynamic and a crime external dynamic. Now, moving on to our community dynamics. Does their community feel this pressure? The community is a group of people who experiences pressure simply because they're a member of that community. And in this case, it's the Who's. Do they feel it in their body, their experience of injustice, their experience of evil, their relationships? If it's their body, yes, that would make it, though, war. And I don't think war really fits that well because it's rather one-sided. It's more the threat of boiling due to injustice. So that gives us a society community dynamic. For our internal dynamic, we have redemption. For our external dynamic, we have society supported by crime and action. And anytime you have a community dynamic, you're going to have that individual dynamic as well. We see how the injustice in society causes crimes or the injustice for individuals. And for the other community dynamics, war that's felt in the bodies of people. Religion becomes, if it's like a cult controlling people, that becomes like an experience of horror for individuals. Community love on the plus side is experienced as love by individuals. Now that we've identified the story dynamics, let me ask, are the story dynamics at work in your work in progress as clear to you as Theodore Geisel's Dr. Seuss's were to him? Because if they're not, you could get muddled. And so to stay out of muddledom, you'll want to know your dynamics. The last thing I want to do is take a look at the theme. What is the theme of Horton Hears a Who? If you watched the last video, you heard it 3 times. It's on page 6, page 16, and page 58. A person's a person, you know how to finish it. A person's a person, no matter how small. And we also get a show not tell when the littlest person gives the yop that puts it over the top and saves their whole world. That was Geisel's message to our society. Everyone matters, no matter how small. And because he told the story so well, it echoes even still. Please subscribe if you haven't yet done so. It helps the channel grow and helps me keep going. Thank you so much. See you next week. Tally ho.